So the problem in the Middle East is that everything has been painted in black and white. Identity politics are now fragmenting societies deeply. And to a certain extent, civil society has played into those fragmentations, simply because there's very little resources and the donor funds have come in to reinforce the fragmentations rather than support building bridges. So in as much as it is important to build bridges between South and North civil society, it's also important to build bridges between South and South civil society groups. And to create that space requires us to look at the world in multiple color lenses and not just black and white lenses. Very often we have fallen victims to the same policies that we try to critique. We play into the divisions, we play into simplistic analysis and narratives about how society is organized in the region. And to that extent, we have encouraged conflict rather than contributed to resolving conflict. I think it's important today to take a step backward and look at the region as a place where there's many stakeholders, many players. And policy needs to address how you create inclusive spaces rather than build patronage networks. Very often, this is a very complex game, and the European decision makers have decided to refrain from playing it because it's too complex. So what they do is they refrain from entering into the politics of it, and they prefer to do the humanitarian or the quasi-developmental aspect of the development paradigm, leaving civil society pretty much to fend for itself, and in a sense leaving societies for their own conflicts. So the Palestinians and the Israelis go into war after war after war, and the European community, instead of coming in to mitigate differences, they just come in and rebuild the Palestinian space after every war. Now, this is important from a humanitarian point of view, but it's not contributing to a solution. Likewise, in Syria, everybody is running right now to look at taking care of the humanitarian crisis. Again, very important, but if we take into consideration that all of the humanitarian aid in Syria is not enough to feed people for, or at least a quarter of the immigrants, there's 3/4 of the refugees that don't get support. There's 3/4 of the people who are in need will never be able to be covered by humanitarian aid. So the issue is not to run away from the problems and pretend that we're doing good by doing humanitarianism or touchy-feely developmental type things, but to look deeply into how can we resolve conflict, how can we build that space where civil society can negotiate across dividing lines rather than take sides on the different dividing lines. Peace is not just a simple word. Peace requires a lot of work and requires a lot of concessions, and it requires a lot of negotiations. And in a sense, instead of putting development aid and humanitarian aid in this box or in that box and spending a whole lot of time vetting which box to put the aid in, let's put the aid in the middle and encourage both sides to come to it rather than both sides to take their own little compartmentalized size.